To see the fully uncut version of this video, head over to patreon.com/Jonjo Lyons.
What's that like to live deliciously? Chaos reigns.
Please don't scream.
Nah, Sid, don't you blame the movies. Movies don't create psychos. Movies make psychos more creative.
What's going on? My name is Jonjo Lyons, and today I'm here to present to you my review for Wound. Written and directed by David Blythe, Wound stars all of these lot. A woman searches for her mother who abandoned her after being abused. The daughter, believed dead, returns to torment and possess her mother, driving her into a state of madness and violent revenge. How you doing, my irreparably broken sacks of pain, misery and self-loathing? It's that time again. Time to check out yet another weird as art house horror movie. This week we'll be taking a look at Wound, a confusing and depressing indie horror movie that isn't your typical horror but still cuts deep. Luckily for us, this journey into utter bleakery is anchored by a great lead performance and a couple of scenes that are truly unforgettable. Especially one. You'll know it when you see it. Oh god. The gape! I will also say they tried to ban this movie in New Zealand, and while I think that's a bit of an overreaction, I can understand why they were upset. I don't know what else to say about this one really, just that it's not going to be very much fun. Unless you like unrelenting despair. Then I've got you. But before we get into all of that, I just want to remind you, you can see this video completely uncut and early at patreon.com/Jonjo Lyons for as little as $3 a month. That's it. Want to see the uncut videos, gain access to the Discord and all the Patreon exclusive stuff? Go over there now. We're also nearing the end of post-production on my short film Better Anything, and if you still haven't claimed some of the perks available for that production, go over to the link in the pinned comment and description below. There's all sorts of good stuff in there, including the new poster designed by Traffart. He also did all the art on the Necromantic Part 3 comic book. It's not called Part 3, but it's the third part in the overarching story, so. But anyway, I'm in the mood to watch somebody spiral into oblivion, so let's not waste any more time. Get ready to wonder just what in the actual f*** is in that freezer. It can't be what I think it is, can it? This is Wound. The movie begins with the title card and this fella pulling up to a house. He knocks on the door and we see this woman, Susan, on CCTV as she answers. Susan welcomes the man in and we find out he's her father and has been working in London pursuing a career as an actor, something he comments he couldn't have done in this country. Which is New Zealand, by the way, hence the attempted banning. He then comments on all the clutter in the house when the woman puts him to sleep.
Want to live amongst all this stuff?
I like it like that.
She drags him away as we see a grave then. Cut to this creepy room as the woman lights a candle, then approaches Daddy. She says this is for how he hurt her and he says she wanted it before getting himself blindfolded. The woman starts choking him as we get a pretty fucking rancid POV flashback. The woman then snaps his neck, pulls his dick out and chops it off with scissors. Jesus Christ, was he keeping all his blood in his dick? It's like a fountain! The woman then takes off her mask and sings to one of her dolls as the others watch on. Cut to this girl humming the same song as we hear a train horn, then back to the woman with this fella who she calls Sir. Sir makes Susan read out an email he'd previously sent as he detailed exactly how he wanted her to look for the next meeting, housewife, innocent, etc., ending with a request that she text him to confirm she understood her instructions. It seems Susan emailed back instead of texting and Sir isn't happy about that. Sir tells her to remove her top and bra and says he's going to have to punish her for this infringement. He begins to bind Susan while advising she must send him daily welfare reports by text and a more detailed email with her thoughts, feelings and emotions arising out of their sessions. Sir then pops on a camera as the train is heard again and he tells Susan she must show the audience her absolute service to him. Susan says she doesn't want to be recognised, but Sir just tells her to stay in her role to serve him. He then whacks some clothes pegs on her nips and blindfolds her before telling her to find the subspace. Not to think, just to serve.
Louder, I can't hear you.
I am Susan, Master John's submissive housewife.
Much better.
You know, I'd never really understood the whole pain for pleasure thing. I know people that do, so no judgments, just not for me. Not for Jonjo. I'm in near constant agony, both mentally and physically. If pain turned me on, I'd be rock hard 24 hours a day. Cut to more CCTV footage of Susan with Dad in a wheelie bin as she dumps whatever this is in with him and takes him for a ride outside. After a struggle, she makes it to the garden grave and pulls his body in. She also plops down all of those little tin foil things she got from the freezer, then starts to bury the old. Here we also see the gravestone of someone named Ruth Perdue who died in 1992, which is fun to say. Cut to the bathroom where Susan picks up a phone, then goes to take a shit before making a call and asking for Ruth Perdue. I don't think she's gonna answer, mate, because never mind. Never mind. The train sounds off again as Susan greets this Ruth as Mum, saying she's struggling with money but still taking the pill she was prescribed. Mum then seemingly changes the subject to her trip to Fiji when we hear the dial tone, but Susan continues to talk, reminding her of when they were last on a beach together. She then stops, stands, and picks up a dump, wrapping it. Cut to Susan putting this in the freezer with a lot more like it, and are those supposed to be dumps? What in the mental health crisis is going on here? Also, congrats on having a dump solid enough to wrap. I'm mostly just water and blood nowadays. Cut to a school as the tree girl from earlier walks with her friend. She leaves the friend behind to enter the school counsellor's office, who has the same camera as Sir. Here we find out her name is Tanya as the counsellor checks over the girl's details like her address and whatnot. The counsellor asks how she's been since her last visit and Tanya says okay. She asks Tanya about a boy named Mark, if she's seen him, which she has, if she's pregnant, which she's not, and if she's sleeping with him.
Would you like to?
Okay, red flag, red flag. I don't like this counsellor. She then asks about school and home, with Tanya saying it's better. Finally, Tanya asks if the documents came and the counsellor hands it over as we find out the girl was adopted and has been trying to find her birth parents. Unfortunately, there was no father on the certificate, but her mum has been located right here in town.
How does it finally feel?
Tell you about my mother.
Cut back to Susan as she checks the mail, finding a letter about her daughter Tanya. Ugh! Get the out of my face!
She's your daughter. Help her.
Help me! Cut to Susan working sales from home, selling printers or something, and not doing well. After a few fails, she starts to get a nosebleed and passes out, transporting us to this train track. At the same time, it seems Tanya is having the same dream when she wakes up and texts someone asking if they're okay. She then looks at the picture of her mother and sets it on fire as we watch Susan's face burn away in a shot that I really like. Cut to this smoky doorway as Tanya and her friend from earlier enter a club. Inside, this woman is getting herself tied up by Mistress Ruth, who welcomes the girls to the box.
Welcome to the box.
Mistress Ruth is welcome to my box anytime. She calls Tanya family, which confuses her, then tells them to go enjoy themselves as we cut to a mega goth dance party. Tanya dances in front of the pig DJ, who also happens to be tugging his pud, as we suddenly cut to the dream man laying on the train track as the sound of a train approaches. This seems to spook the girl, so she heads to the bathroom asking Mark out loud where he is. That's when she gets a text from him that says she was the only one who cared, as behind her the boy appears. Tanya kisses him, then collapses when Piggy jumps on top and starts raping her. Cut to the dream track where Tanya and Mark cuddle. The sound of a train approaching can be heard, gathering speed, so the two lay down. Cut back to Susan as she's once again joined by Sir, one of the lesser known Knights of the Round Table. He gets her to show multiple positions of service, then tells her to go to her desk and open her exercise book.
Right. Little Susan torched her mother in a fire of desire. And before she was all through, she cut her daddy in two.
I hate this bloke. Just that smarmy self-importance makes me want to watch him have sex with a blender. He makes her drink some coffee which looks like piss, then tells her to do it again and again before making her stick on these headphones.
I'm your father. I've come back from London to see you. Why are you doing this?
Wait, so does he know about the father's depenising? Susan then begs to go to the bathroom, but Sir won't let her leave, instead forcing her to listen to her father plead for his life. He pushes her against the desk and we cut to CCTV of my kitchen sink, the front door, and Tanya approaching her mother's house. Susan answers when she's jumped by Tanya, who asks her mother if she knows who she is. Daughter then has a little cry when Susan says Tanya died before she could hold her. Whoa now! It's gonna be one of those movies, is it? Susan says she can't help her now, but Tanya begs to know why her mother forsook her. Susan then hears her mother's voice again telling her to help the girl when we cut to her having a rough time in the bathroom. She badly pretends to throw up while crying, then tries to make a phone call but only hears her own voice making sales calls. She then takes her pills as we cut to Tanya climbing out of the dump freezer and finding Susan asleep. She lays down next to her on the bed and watches her sleep for a moment before exposing her breast and trying to feed. Cut to Susan in the morning as she prepares to take a shower. She sees one of her nipples are all bruised up, then jumps in washing herself off. The music then turns sinister as we see Susan is having a pretty heavy flow day. She steps out of the shower and lays on the ground as the blood pools around her, reaching the bathroom door. We then cut to Tanya on the other side of the bathroom door doing this. Nothing like a puddle of broken down vagina wall to really get you in the mood for family reconciliation. Cut to Susan spotting her daughter in the garden with the shovel as she heads round back. We again see Ruth's gravestone, then cut to Tanya digging up her grandfather. Susan then goes to check this out for herself. Well, cut to this doctor's office as Susan takes a seat. The doctor, who again has the same camera as everyone else because apparently in Auckland they only sell one type, or the director only had one camera, asks how the medication is going. I'm just gonna go out on a limb here and say not very well, doc. Susan says it makes her constantly sleepy, that she can't do anything, and her daughter has returned but she can't control her. The doctor says she has no living daughter according to her records, but Susan begs him to believe her, saying she's real and wants to kill her. Doc then brings up the stillbirth she had, asking if that's correct, but Susan doesn't know as that was in the past. Doc says he's gonna have to change her medication, but again Susan says her daughter is real and she's seeing her everywhere she looks. Finally, the man decides to section Susan because she's clearly completely and calls a crisis team to come and pick her up. Susan then says she wants to talk about her dad, but the doctor says they need to stabilize her first and tells her to go and sit in the waiting room.
I'm sick of the waiting room. I've spent my life in the waiting room.
I genuinely love that line and performance there. Susan is literally the best part of this film. She leaves as the doctor gives a report of her condition and medication to camera, as well as a diagnosis. Cut to the waiting room as Tanya enters and sits next to her mother. She takes her hand and leads her away as we cut to the women walking. They arrive back at Susan's as we then cut to yet another terrifying mask.
Little Susan touched her mother in a fire of desire. Before she was through, she cut her daddy in two.
Whatever the is going on here, okay? I just want to wake up. Alright? You hear me? I just want to wake up! Both women struggle to breathe as they're wrapped tighter when Sir Piggy slowly cuts them loose. Cut to Susan sleeping and then to her dad entering her childhood room and smelling the bed sheets. And then the abuse from the dad's POV with an adult Susan. Cut to younger Susan, played by the same actress playing Tanya, as her mother lovingly breaks the sad news.
Your baby's dead.
A masked up young Susan, now with black hair, then enters this room to find Grandma slapping the bottom of whatever the this fella is supposed to be. In response to this, Susan douses the building in gasoline and sets it alight, killing her mother. Cut back to Susan's place as we get more CCTV and then see Tanya materialize in front of the mirror with a bleeding nose. She runs off as this nightmare appears again and begins to bash against the door, begging to be let out. Susan comes in and hugs Tanya as behind them Grandma appears. Okay, I think I finally have a bit of a grasp on what the is going on here. We'll wait till the analysis part of the video for me to try my best to explain, but I think I have something to hold on to now.
Everything's forgiven. Because we're all family, right? We're all family. Yeah. There it goes.
Cut to Tanya walking through a bunch of curtains as we hear Grandpa delivering some sort of theatrical monologue. We also see Susan in this curtain world, but she's quickly dragged off by Bird Boy. Ruth leads the new couple down the hall and closes the door when we cut to Susan screaming as she's secured to a table. Her mother beats and berates her as the woman scream cries when she begins to give birth. As fake as it looks, that is the most monstrous vagina ever committed to film. And I've seen your mum's sex tape. So for the YouTube viewers, what we're looking at here is two fully grown women being birthed out of the monster vagina with doll masks on, completely covered in blood and writhing around. It's truly a sight to behold. Cut to Susan being roused from her sleep by a knock at the door. They're the crisis team who tell her she's been sectioned and after a quick struggle sedate her. They then whack her in the van as she quietly hums the song to herself when Tanya appears in front of them. They get out to check on her and she collapses in their arms. Susan mutters she's not real as they drop Tanya in the van too. Tanya then opens her eyes, creeps over the seats and attacks the men. The driver up especially bad. During the chaos, Susan makes it out of the van and runs for it, once more badly pretending to throw up. Oh, never mind. And I have no idea what the that was supposed to be. Was it the driver's eye? The dad's severed penis? Who's to say? Susan eventually makes it inside this place, calling out for Tanya. She shows her picture to a bunch of people in this smoky train carriage, but none of them are able to help. We also get this bit of voiceover as Susan bows to Sir.
You caught a glimpse of her daughter when she opened the door. Half opened the door. And you knew, then and there, that her story would continue through her daughter.
Well, what the f does that mean then? Cut to Susan dead on her keyboard where she collapsed earlier. Finally, we cut to Tanya humming the song in heaven, and the film comes to a confusing end. The end! Well, I told you it was going to be difficult. But I kind of like it. I think. Wound is a return to form for the channel as it's been a super long time since I was so completely lost by a movie. For the most part, I think. The story is, well, up to interpretation and can seem pretty random, but I think I might have an idea on what was actually going on. What I'm about to say is what I think the filmmaker could have been going for, and honestly doesn't entirely fit, but it's the best I could do, so here we go. I think Tanya doesn't exist at all and is actually young Susan, who was the victim of multiple assaults as a child and a young woman. She got pregnant either by her boyfriend Mark or her dad, and Mark also possibly after finding out about the pregnancy took a nap on those train tracks. Then Susan lost the baby and as a result of all this trauma suffered with severe mental illness. She then killed her mother and progressed into adulthood. Around now was presumably when she'd kill her father, if that ever happened at all, and this event led to her finding peace. Both parents dead and working a steady job until she randomly dies. Or alternatively, the murder of her father sent her on a downward spiral leading to her younger self emerging. This still leaves a lot unanswered, like who the was Sir for one, but I think this was pretty much what was going on. I'd love to hear from the director in the comments if he ever sees this video. I'm sure I'm nowhere near correct, but that's the fun thing about art house horror. Onto the characters, and there's really only one performance I want to talk about here, and that's Kate O'Rourke, who plays Susan. Everyone else is standard enough for a film of this nature, but Kate goes above and beyond in an absolutely fearless performance. She really broke my heart in her more brutal moments, especially when tearfully begging for help from those around her, such as her mother and the doctor. Then you have the most daring parts of the movie that she seems to handle with ease. In an otherwise confusing and pretty standard art house movie, I think her performance really elevates it. Gore-wise, the movie really had me worried. It starts off so strong with a super gory de-penising, then nothing remotely bad happens for a really long time. Things pick up at the end with the monster vagina and the savage murder of the crisis team, but this one was more about the disorientation and devastation of Susan's situation. Again, I was mostly sucked in by Susan's performance, so it didn't really bother me, but when we got it, it went hard. Production wise, the film is competent in all the basic areas, but what you really want to see in an art house horror movie is some weird visuals and sets. Unfortunately, this is where the film falls short. I can't stop thinking about how cheap the curtain world looked. While I can appreciate what they're going for, it seems like they must have spent all their money on the monster vagina and had to sort of freestyle the rest. Still, apart from that, there's nothing that sticks out as particularly bad. In the end, Wound is an interesting and sometimes devastating look at abuse, trauma, and mental health. As I said, I'd love to get some clarification on exactly what was going on here, but to the film's credit, I did enjoy it the more it went on. The audience for this movie is a very particular one, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but if you fancy something super weird and sometimes frustrating with a couple of brutal scenes, then you should give it a go. Just be warned, do not look directly into the eye of the monster vagina, or it may swallow your soul for all eternity. So that was my review for Wound. What do you lot think? Again, the more it went on, the more I enjoyed it, and I'm very glad things got brutal at the end. As epic as it was, for the longest time, I really thought all we were gonna get was that fountain. Speaking of which, if you want to see a crisis team get ripped apart completely uncut and early, head over to patreon.com/Jonjo Lyons. There you can find the uncut version of this review plus others with more stuff being added every single week. We got the uncut reviews, Patreon exclusive reviews, / comic breakdowns in the Discord. And all that can be yours for as little as $3 a month. You can pledge more, I really appreciate it as I need to pay for therapy. I've made this joke before, but it's genuinely true. I'm about 2 or 3 steps away from wrapping my shit up in tin foil. So that's it for another week. Like the video, leave a comment, and click subscribe if you haven't already. My name's Jonjo Lyons, and speaking of tinfoil what the was going on there? I'm not even going to make some sort of snarky joke. I really need to know what the metaphor was behind that. Jesus, imagine how horrible that would smell in a microwave. Talk about a cursed baked potato. See you next time.